Midianites and Amalekites and the people of the east would come up against them. They would encamp against them and destroy the produce of the land as far as the neighborhood of Gaza, and leave no sustenance for Israel, nor any sheep or ox or donkey. For they and their livestock would come up, and they would even bring their tents as thick as locusts. Neither they nor their camels could be counted. So they wasted the land as they came in. Thus Israel was greatly impoverished because of Midian, and the Israelites cried out to help to the Lord. Picking up in verse 11. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, as his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, you mighty warrior." And Gideon answered him, "But sir, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his wonderful deeds that our ancestors recounted to us, saying, 'Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt?' But now the Lord has cast us off and given us into the hand of Midianite." And then the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in this might of yours and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. I hereby commission you." And Gideon responded, "But sir, how can I deliver Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." And the Lord said to him, "But I will be with you, and you shall strike down the Midianites, every one of them." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit today about, get you oriented a little bit towards Ukraine, what's happening in Ukraine in terms of the war and how it's affecting people, but also just mainly focusing on what the work of the United Methodist Church is in Ukraine right now. But in response to the text we just read, I wanted to teach you some Ukrainian words. How would you like to learn? Anybody speak Ukrainian? In that case, I'm really good. So this is the phrase from we read in the text today. God is with you. The Lord is with you. Bog is the first word. Bog. Everybody say bog. Z is with. Z. And it kind of attaches itself to the next phrase. Taboyu. Taboyu. So bogs taboyu. And also with you. Thank you. Okay, so as we look at Ukraine today, this is a map of Ukraine, and you've probably seen this in the news a lot lately, but you can see that it's heavily bordered by many different countries, but mostly Russia to the east and to the north, and a little bit wrapping around through the Sea of Azov there at the bottom of the screen. But it's also borders many countries in Eastern Europe, including Romania, Moldova, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia. Where I've been spending most of my time has been right here, about as far out from the fighting taking place. The front line is going like this, about here. So I'm about as far, and well into Europe, so people are often concerned about my safety, but this is a rather safe area of Ukraine. The Carpathian mountain range comes through here, so it's protected by mountains on the east side, and then, of course, these are all NATO nations that surround it on the west side. So it's fairly safe where I've been traveling the last few years since I took on this new work. But let me tell you a little bit about Ukraine. Ukraine geographically is about the size of Texas. Before the war, there was 45 million people that inhabited Ukraine. The language is primarily Ukrainian and Russian. Most of Ukrainian language is spoken, if you divide the nation sort of like this. This side mostly speaks Ukrainian. This side mostly spoke Russian due to the long years of communism and inability to hang on to their Ukrainian culture and language, and a lot of immigration of Russian and Ukrainians back and forth across the border. Since the war, about 80,000, these are estimates, no one knows for sure, 80,000 have died and about 420,000 have been wounded. About 27,000 of those who have died or wounded are civilians. About 6.5 million people are in internally displaced within Ukraine. In other words, people in the east are typically displaced and living somewhere in the west of Ukraine. And another 5 million are living in Europe or elsewhere, some in the U.S., since the beginning of the war. About 2.2 million are serving in the military right now. So if you're doing the math, well over 1/3 of the nation is now either serving on the front or living in a new place that they didn't live 2 and 3.5 years ago when the war started. They've either fled to Europe or fled to another place in Ukraine. So no matter who you are in Ukraine, you have either lost multiple relationships due to people moving or dying in the war, or you are now involved with a person that you didn't once know, you didn't know most of your life, but now they're now living right next to you. They're working on the assembly line next to you. Your job, or also your job might be likely on the line now because factories have closed in the east. You have fled to the west. There's not enough work because Western countries are pulling their business out of Ukraine because they're worried about its stability. So your job may be at threat. You may be grieving because someone very close to you has died. You're scared or you're hiding out. In fact, on my most recent trip, when I first arrived to the United Methodist shelter, we have a shelter administrator there. Since this is recorded, I'm not going to say much more about that. But there were military police looking for him to enlist him. He's a displaced person, has lived in our shelter for about 3 years, and he had to hide in an area of the shelter in order to avoid conscription, which is another problem in Ukraine, which brings me to our next word. Here's another word. This is a brand new Ukrainian word, so if you know it, it's new to you, but it's also new to Ukrainians. The word is busifikatsiya. Busifikatsiya. This word means, it literally translates to bussification. And it refers to the practice in Ukraine where conscription officers check men who are walking down the streets to see if they have their military exemption cards. And if they don't, those who fail to show such cards are forcibly detained and placed on a direct bus and going to mobilization centers to begin training. If it happens to you, 1 minute you were a software developer, and within 24 hours you are now in fatigues and training on a remote base. It's a remote area both to keep you safe from Russian drones, but also to keep you from fleeing. In this picture, there is a picture of one of our United Methodist young people. He was a missionary to Africa, actually, in fatigues here. This is his girlfriend, soon-to-be fiance, but he's from our student ministry, as is she, the one that my wife and I had the joy of planting way back in 2008. So that's what he's experienced in November of last year. What his girlfriend has experienced is about a year ago. 1 minute, both her brother and in 1 month, both her brother and her fiance were forcibly conscripted. Meanwhile, she is without work because her job was cut off because of the economic downturn. Europeans, like I said, go elsewhere because they aren't sure if the companies will be stable in the next 6 months. Let me take you to another slide. This slide shows a picture of our newest United Methodist pastor, Pastor Alexander. He served the church, and that's this guy here. He serves a church south of Kyiv called in the city of Ukrainka. It's been bombed several times because there's an electric power station there. He served a non-denominational church that was looking for a denomination, and because he had gone on a Walk to Emmaus experience with another United Methodist pastor in Ukraine, they became friends, and he became interested in Wesleyan theology and the Methodist movement, and he and his church joined us in this last year. But what I wanted to talk about, a story that he told me, is that what happens in his small groups among men is those who haven't been conscripted are feeling a tremendous amount of guilt because they, on the one hand, they would love to be able to serve and protect their country, but on the other hand, they're petrified and worried about their lives and feel unsuited for military service. So there's a lot of pastoral counseling that goes into trying to help people navigate. How do we do this? Do we fight? Do we not fight? And how do we live with ourselves if we don't? That's one issue. Another issue is many of the men in Ukraine right now lie very low, and so they have left their work in order to not be found on the streets, and this causes marital issues, and many of the wives who might not have been working or are taking on 2 jobs now in order to keep make ends meet. So that's just another product of the war that we don't often hear about. Is not just those that are on the front line, but what's going on with the people's lives of those who aren't on the front line. Let me tell you a little bit about the United Methodist Church in Ukraine. So there's not a lot of Methodists in Ukraine. It's an Orthodox and Greek Catholic country. So when we lived there was 13 United Methodist churches, and now there's 10. The reason we lost a few was because they've been annexed by Russia and then dissolved. So I probably know almost every Methodist in Ukraine. There's not a lot, so don't think and the church sizes are similar to yours. Okay, so it's not like this mega church movement throughout Ukraine, but it has been there. There have been United Methodist roots in Ukraine since before World War II. In the western Ukraine region, and then of course when the wall came down in 1989, was it somewhere in there? We began to replant churches across Ukraine. So we have now 10 and growing. There's a few things. I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but before I do, there's a few other things that I've learned since returning and learning about war, which I didn't know before. First of all, do you know that when a stronghold is overcome, that we take the weapons and ammunition and use it against the enemy? Like, I didn't realize that. Like, there's a constant exchange as the front line moves back and forth, where weapons are used against your own weapons are used against you, and vice versa. I didn't realize that before. Another thing that happens in war is that when there's fatalities, it's not easy to retrieve the bodies because even the bodies are mined and booby-trapped. So if you go in to try to pull a body from the ground, it may have a mine underneath it. So there's special forces that are trained in just retrieving those who have died in war. These are things I didn't know. But another thing I didn't know was there's a difference in this word I have on the screen. There's a difference between refugees and internally displaced people. Did you know that? So a refugee is somebody who's outside the border running for their lives, and a displaced person, an internally displaced person, is basically a refugee within inside the borders. So like I said earlier, there's about 6.5 million displaced persons and about 5 million refugees. These are things I didn't know. I've learned a lot of this by this man, Pablo. Pablo grew up in our United Methodist Church in Kyiv, and when the full-scale invasion happened 3.5 years ago, he and his wife, and at the time 2 boys, ran for their lives from Kyiv to the west. They made their way down to Uzhgorod, which is right around here, not on the map anymore, to the west. And as he made his way, many people were running, and so they would call ahead to a friend who might be 100 kilometers ahead of them and find out where they ate, where they stayed for the night, and maybe we could do the same. And on their run, they were helped by churches, all kinds of churches, Protestant and Orthodox Greek Catholic churches. They might stay the night on the floor of a church. And so when he got to Uzhgorod, and now he had left his work, running for their lives, he thought, they felt safe in Uzhgorod, we must do something to help others like we've been helped. And so he and 5 other men began a movement to start to immediately develop a shelter for others who were on the run. And at the time, thousands for sure of people were running every day. Remember the images. And so they through connections of United Methodists across the world and other churches, they got some funding immediately and immediately opened a shelter in a local school. that school had to resume session that next fall. So by that time, they had found a printing company that had an old dormitory. And they were able to open up the 8th floor and the 2nd floor and make dorm rooms for refugees. And they immediately put in washers and dryers and air conditioning units, and of course, what do you call it? Generators when the electricity is often shut off. This was largely due to contributions like yours to places like UMCOR. They were able to get funding through UMCOR and other things like that to help establish this shelter. So this mostly happened through the work of Pablo. But Pablo, I'll come back to Pablo. So after we still needed space after we opened up the shelter in the dormitory, and so we developed this vision to what would it look like if we had a space where people could live longer while they tried to relocate themselves, and if we could have a center that could help for spiritual development and trauma care. And so through UMCOR contributions, they eventually procured this building. And the building, literally, the name of the place is called Under the Castle. Here, it used to be a restaurant, hotel, wedding venue type of place. That man was seeking to get out of Ukraine because of the war, so his building was up for sale. It's called Under the Castle because right in this picture, I'm up at the castle ruins taking a picture of it right here. So it literally lies under the castle. It's a beautiful, gorgeous building. It's a blessing for the United Methodist Ministry in Ukraine to have it. It's located in the village of Kamianets outside of Uzhgorod, about 7 miles. And the reason it's why we like that location is because our strongest United Methodist churches are in that area. One in Uzhgorod, one in this village, and one down the road, and also a small Roma church among Roma is the preferred word for gypsy. We have a Roma congregation, and it's all sort of around this Transcarpathian area of Ukraine. It's our strongest area for United Methodist. So it was important to build a shelter in that area, or to have a shelter in that area. But I wanted to tell you that this comes from United Methodist contributions to UMCOR almost exclusively. So we're very grateful for that. But like others, Pablo was trying to decide. When we moved to Uzhgorod, my wife and family moved to the Netherlands, and I've been managing this new shelter and trying to get things moving. Meanwhile, my wife and 2 boys now speak Dutch and Frisian, this dialect where the Vanderwerfs come from. He's been away from his family for 2.5 years. And so last summer, a year ago, he had, I guess it would be a year and 9 months ago, his wife came to visit, and if you have 3 children, you can leave, and you're a male between the ages of 18 and 60, and you have 3 children, you can leave the country. So a child was born in the Netherlands, and Pablo applied for a military exemption, and he had to really decide, should I stay or should I go? And he chose to go, and now he makes toothbrushes at the Philips factory in northern Netherlands. So it's a big loss for our church, but like Pablo, we've lost many leaders. I don't blame them, but I'm just saying we've lost many leaders just to migration because of the war. And there's sort of brain drain. Some of our strongest leaders are the ones who often have access to Western Europe. So what are we doing? So who's managing the fort? Well, Pablo's gone because he did such a great job. So this is the man with the great head of hair there, like mine, is named Oleg, and he's our district superintendent. And these are his 2 girls and his wife Yulia. She's also a pastor in the United Methodist Church, and pretty much the United Methodist ministry among shelters is being run by Yulia, Pastor Yulia, his wife, and she manages both the shelter in town in Uzhgorod and the old book printing building, and she also manages the shelter at Under the Castle. Like others, they're also refugees. They're actually missionaries from Kyrgyzstan, who spoke Russian and he was sent to be the district superintendent in Ukraine. The war broke out while he was there. He applied for Ukrainian citizenship in the time of war, and they are permanent residents now of Ukraine. And even though their native tongue is Russian and some Kyrgyzstan dialect, they now are deliberate about speaking Ukrainian. And they've been living in Kyiv the last 5 years before the war. And after the war, they moved to Uzhhorod. They've been living in the shelter while their kids attend school in the local village. They just last month got an apartment in the city of Uzhhorod. But they manage a lot of our work there. You might have saw her in that video when I gave a box of supplies from Heron Lake last week to her, and she'll see that they're distributed in the shelter. So in Pavel's absence, Yulia is now the chief administrator of the IDP shelters, as well as the main translator for Oleg, because their new bishop is from Norway, and the common language is English, and Oleg's English is a little rusty. Let me see, what else can I show you here? This slide, this is the United Methodist pastor and his wife and sister-in-law and her husband were dining at a restaurant in Kyiv that I visited in February. When the war broke out, they fled to Poland, and most of our pastors would immediately turn to, remember COVID was happening when the war broke out. In other words, if you're 5.5 years old, your only experience in this world has been pandemic and war. Isn't that crazy? We say that that's our common experience. We had a pandemic, but that's certainly not our common experience. But that is their only experience they know is pandemic and war. But they fled to Poland, and like many pastors, they were doing online service at the time, which actually made it possible to keep their church together when they're scattered throughout Ukraine and across Western Europe. So they continue to meet online, but they got tired of life in Poland. It was a strange life, so they moved back to Kyiv, even though Kyiv sustains missile strikes on a daily basis. But it's still, someone told me it's still more likely to die in a car accident than get hit by a missile, but it's still dangerous. You hear the sirens every day in Kyiv, that there's incoming drones. Okay, the reason I've been teaching a few phrases in Ukrainian is because Stacy and I, we knew this pastor, Pastor Volodymyr, and his wife, way back when we were living there, and we would go to annual conference, and Stacy and I would speak our best version of Ukrainian, and they would all say, oh, it's so great that you're learning Ukrainian, we don't understand it, we're Russian speakers. And Stacy and I would be the only Ukrainian speakers at the Ukrainian annual conference. But what I want to say to you today is they all speak Ukrainian now. Because they recognize when they speak the language of the enemy, it gives the enemy one more propaganda message to say, it's our people, we're rescuing our people. And they want to say, no, we're not your people, we don't want to be Russian. And so there's this movement of people who were, 15, 20 years ago, they were stubborn and kept speaking Russian, and now they realize, I'm a little bit of a Ukrainian nationalist, I'm just going to be honest with you. They realize that they should change their language. And it's always been within them, but now it's coming out more. It's just really fascinating to hear people that said, oh, it's great that you're speaking, but we can't speak it, and now they're speaking it intentionally. So wanted to share that with you. What the United Methodist Church is doing due to the leadership drain, like I said, we have 10 churches. Most of our pastors are middle-aged to quite getting up there in years. And so we're trying to rebuild leadership. So we're spending a lot of time in, most of my time in the last 2 years, I've been going back about twice a year for short trips, but the trips are usually focused on young leadership development and youth camps, trying to just reconnect with young people and connect them to the United Methodist Church, and then develop them as leaders in the church. We now have 6 people in seminary right now, which is, I don't think we have 300 churches in Minnesota. I'm not sure if we have 6 people in seminary in Minnesota. I could be wrong about that. They had this audacious goal 2 years ago at annual conference that even in the midst of war, that they would establish 10 new congregations in the next 5 years. Since that goal was stated 2 years ago, we have a new congregation developing 7 miles down the road from our shelter. We have another one on 7 miles on the other side of the shelter that's beginning to be formed. And we also have, of course, we are planting churches among refugees in Germany. There's a pastor, there's a young, a lay person from Kyiv who became a local pastor when he fled to Germany, and he finds himself with a number of other Ukrainians, and now he's planting a small little Ukrainian-speaking United Methodist congregation in Bispingen, Germany, and we have the same thing happening in the northern Netherlands now. So it's kind of amazing. I'm always shocked at how much they get done when they're so small and so feeble and in the midst of war. But it puts us to shame, honestly. It's just amazing. And they also have the plan to develop 2 spiritual and social centers. One has already been purchased under the castle, and we're working on purchasing another one in Kyiv, but not until the war comes to an end. Let's see, what else do I want? So this is a picture of our youth retreat in February. This was to kind of I brought 4 people from Texas Tech Wesley Foundation to come and lead a leadership retreat. We have young leaders. We have young leaders now. I said there's 6 people in seminary. We have, of the 6 in seminary, we also have 1 young person who's working as the United Methodist Communications Director now, employed by us. We have 1 working as the Conference Youth Coordinator, 1 working as Administrative Assistant for the DS, and 1 working as a Director of our cafe. So that nice wedding venue that's turned into a shelter, the local villagers have always known it to be a restaurant, and so they still come knocking, expecting to find a restaurant. So they decided to open a cafe, reopen the restaurant, and serve people, and the contribution, the profit made from the restaurant goes back to help serve the residents that are living there. So it's amazing, and it's being run by about a 24-year-old girl as the administrator. So they're really seeing the rise of young leadership. It's really quite impressive. Let's see. Here are some of the residents that are displaced, that are living in our shelter. Like I said, at the time of the war, they were probably seeing 150 people every day that was turning over, just people on the run trying to get to wherever they're finally going to get to. Now those people who live in our shelters have been there probably well over a year, maybe even 2 years. These are the ones who have said, we want to stay, but we don't know. We're still trying to establish ourselves. They're looking for work, maybe have found work. They don't have enough money or there's no property available because so many people have moved in. The small town of, this town right here is where we're planting a church. This small town of Petachin is about 7,000 people 3.5 years ago. Now it's 14,000 people. And factories from the east have begun to rebuild there and move their employees there. So housing becomes a problem. So some of the people in our shelters are there still because they can't find affordable housing. So yeah, this church in Petachin, we've tried 3 times to launch it, and it's passed. About 20 years ago, we built an outside structure with high hopes that we would finish this building and it would be full of people. But like I said, they tried to launch this church 3 times, but due to different reasons, the pastors left the country, the pastors got married, whatever, different things happened, and it never came to be. But they've always had this sort of outbuilding, and now this outbuilding, because of the swell of population, is full on Sunday mornings. About when I say full, it's about 40 people, led by a local pastor, was a social worker down the road, and now we're hoping to raise funds to finish this building, put a parsonage in the back, and to continue to grow that ministry. Here's our pastor in Bisping in Germany. And I have one more story to tell you. This is a new story. I just wanted to share it because I told this woman named Ina that I would share the story. So I don't know if you see images of the war, but a lot of the homes you see that are being destroyed in the east, like in Kharkiv and in the villages, they look kind of impoverished Soviet village homes. This woman, she lived in I've seen her home on pictures. She lived in a mansion. She was a wealthy businesswoman from Zaporizhia. A lot of mountain lakers come from Zaporizhia. And a wealthy business, they had a swimming pool. And she, when the full-scale invasion happened, her husband enlisted right away. And they stayed in their home as long as they could, but when the missile strikes got close enough that the windows would break when they landed, when they didn't hit the building, but close enough so that their windows would break, they felt it's time to leave. So she made her way to our United Methodist shelter in Uzhgorod, and now because she's a person of means, she was a business owner in Zaporizhia. She's been investing in a little village home and has put it back together, and her daughter live there now. But her husband has been missing in action for 1.5 years. She knows he's dead. The people in the platoon have said it, but they've not been able to recover the body. And in the meantime, she pours herself into helping the war effort in whatever way possible. That nice mansion in the Zaporizhia area, depending on the occupation, goes back and forth on this line a lot. But when Ukraine occupies it, Ukrainian men live in her home. About 10 men live in her home while they're fighting in the war. She makes those camouflage nets with her daughter. This little teddy bear has the camouflage net over it. They make those, to hide soldiers and machinery in the trenches. And this is Pastor Allison Schwartz from Hutchinson, Minnesota, that traveled with me this last time. This is her husband who's missing in action. And one of the things she shared with me is that even though she's been received well by the United Methodist Church in the Uzhgorod area, with all these people pouring in from the east now living in the west, they're not always received well. I'm always received well. I'm an American coming to Uzhgorod, but she feels like she's trying to reestablish a life in a place that doesn't really want her to be there. I thought that was a really fascinating story. She talks about she goes to support groups for women who have lost their husbands in the war, but because her husband's body hasn't been recovered, they don't accept her grief. Like, you need to keep praying and give up hope. He still may be out there. She knows he's not. So that feels awkward to her. And then when she goes to worship at the Greek Catholic or Orthodox congregations, she doesn't do the people in the East don't do it like the people in the West. Your Easter basket's prepared wrong. You know how it is, church people. Don't get my mom started about the Cool Whip. But she's what's interesting and fascinating about her is I met her at she lives in this village called Seredny. On the outskirts of a village is a Roma village, a gypsy village, that's inhabited by the Baron, the Roma Baron, they call it kind of the chieftain, and then all these Roma people that choose to live in this place. And we have a United Methodist Church there, and she's the white person that attends that church. And she attends that church because there she feels welcomed and accepted. And she has a very, in spite of the fact that she's lost so much, she continues to give give to the Roma. She pours herself into service. I just find her life fascinating. But I wanted to make sure I shared her story, but also just shared the image of her husband, because you can find her on Instagram. It's really important that people honor his memory for the. I honestly believe that Ukraine is not just protecting Ukraine; they're protecting the whole Western world. So World War III is happening right now, and the men and women that are protecting us in World War III are not ourselves, but Ukrainians. They're not just protecting their own survival, but ours. Okay, this is just a picture in front of our shelter at our last annual our last summer conference. So. Okay, let me bring you back to the story of Gideon. I read that story of Gideon today because it says over and over again that the Lord is with you. And when you ask Ukrainians, how are you able to do this? And they say, only with God. Only with God. Otherwise, we would be done. They're about to go into another cold winter, and they're not looking forward to it. But only with God. Here we see in this story of Gideon that the angel of the Lord approaches him, even though the Israelites are being attacked, and he's hiding in a wine press as he's threshing grain. The angel of the Lord comes to him and says, "The Lord is with you, you mighty warrior." And Gideon says exactly what you and I'd say, like, what do you mean the Lord is with me? We haven't seen the Lord around here forever. I'm hiding in a grain press from the Midianites. The Lord's not with us. And he says, and so he challenges that. And he said, he challenges that first clause, but then later he says, the angel just says, "The Lord is with you, you mighty warrior." And so then he says, "Mighty warrior? I'm like from the smallest tribe of Israel, the tribe of Manasseh. I'm not a warrior." And then the angel says again, "But the Lord is with you." And so it's as if the angel keeps wanting to reiterate to Gideon that you're correct, actually. You're not mighty. But you're only mighty because the Lord is with you. And I want to say that about Ukraine. It's the smallest of the tribes. And they are in themselves not mighty. They're mighty because God is with them. But I also want to say that when we recognize that there is someone on our side, all of a sudden our confidence rises. And we become more able. When we recognize that God is with us, there's a renewed sense of, I can do this, not because of might of my own, but because of the might of the God that holds me up. But it's not only true about God holding us up. Our might is changed just when we know another human being stands with us. And this is why I want to thank you for inviting me and the people of Heron Lake United Methodist Church, because you are standing with Ukraine right now, even in listening to these stories. Do you remember when the war first broke out and we lit up the Empire State Building and the Eiffel Tower and the IDS Center in Minneapolis and all the bridges across the world were standing with Ukraine? Where are they now? This is when they need our support. And as we give them their support, their might is restored. So I want to thank you for the support you've provided so far. I was honored to deliver a box of mittens and gloves on your behalf this last couple weeks ago. And I want to tell you, if you want to know ways you can support Ukraine right now, you can always give through UMCOR, United Methodist Committee on Relief. But in particular, I'm raising funds for our leadership development among young people. I'm always looking to fund the leadership retreat in the summer camp. It costs about $4,000 for the leadership retreat and about $12,000 for 80 kids to go to summer camp. So I'm always looking for contributions to that, and that goes through a different advance number to the United Methodist Church. So if you're interested in that, let me know, and I'll let you know how you can give. Thanks for your time today. God bless you.
I would like that other UMCOR number